Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. A stinker of a Manchester derby, an early relegation confirmed, and even the runaway leaders are stumbling to the finish line. The sun might be shining, but are things getting a bit doom and gloom in the Premier League? Are things more competitive? Are we paying the price for the endless, non-stop calendar? Or are we all just in a season of transition? On today's show, we'll discuss the highs and lows of the weekend's action and try to bring the positive vibes as we look to the midweek games to come. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today, we have the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd, the reporter and tactical analyst Hamza Khalik Lunat, and the former footballer turned journalist Gregor Robertson is here as usual. So team, how are we doing? The sun is out, the football's crap. I couldn't think of the end of that rhyme. But just, you know, am I wrong, Alison? How are your vibes? Just general vibes.
My vibes are good.
Vibes are good.
Vibes are very good.
I
was sat next to people at Spurs yesterday, Sunday, who sort of towards the end were saying things like, "Oh God, we've got 6 more weeks of this," as though they're not in a privileged job. People take it for granted.
Yes.
It's still beautiful in my book.
That's Hamza vibe check. How are we doing?
People bash Fulham too much. Whenever they do well, they sort of just dismiss it. I think Fulham are doing a good job.
Well,
guys yesterday,
it's a very specific way of answering a
in
broad question.
But in approximately 5 minutes' time, you're going to have ample opportunity to praise Fulham to the hilt if you want, because you were at that game to watch them beat Liverpool. Gregor, vibes? We all right? How are we doing?
Vibes are good, yeah.
Vibes are good. Well, that's all right then.
How are your vibes, Tom?
I'd say not. You know, I'm a bit fed up of it. I'm just a bit fed up of the Premier League season, and I don't quite know why, guys. This can be a bit like therapy, maybe, for me.
Because you're not a Fulham fan.
I'm not quite sure why.
Well.
Potentially why, Hamza, yeah. But I think it's interesting. I was like taking a step back and planning this show and just looking at it and going, is it all going to pot? Is it all a bit crap? Are we all a bit tired? What's going on? Just looking at the Premier League table, right? This is the Premier League table this season. You've got Liverpool top, 73 points. Arsenal in second with 62. Nottingham Forest, 57 in third. Chelsea, fourth, 53. This time last season, roughly, because all the games are normally a mess, but roughly the same number of games last season, you had Arsenal top on 71. Then you had Liverpool and Manchester City breathing down their necks on 70. Then you had Aston Villa with 60 points. Then you had Tottenham and Manchester United. You remember them? They were quite good once. Tottenham, 57 points. 20 more points last season than they've got at this stage. This season, 20.
So why does that make it a
2-0.
bad season? That makes it a funny season.
It makes it a funny season. That can be a good answer. Manchester United, this season, 31 games, 38 points. 48 points last season from a game fewer. And then even the teams at the bottom, Alison, I'm not an elitist. I'm not just talking about the big guys. The teams in the relegation zones, Sheffield United, remember them? They were rubbish. They had 15 points from 30 games last season. Southampton already relegated. 31 points. 31 games, 10 points. Then we had Burnley and Luton last season, 19 points and 25. This season, Leicester and Ipswich, 17 and 20. What's going on? What is going on? Is it crap?
Lots of things are going on, I think.
All things can be true.
Lots of things.
Here he comes. Here he comes to save the day.
Well, let's start with the obvious. There's a major problem about the promoted teams.
Yeah.
And that removing a huge chunk of jeopardy in the season because all the teams above them have nothing to play for and no jeopardy. They're not looking over their shoulders at all. So that's the biggest problem facing the Premier League going forward. The rest, like what you just described there, is just a major drop-off from a lot of the elite clubs who we're used to seeing at the top of the table, and they've been replaced by some upwardly mobile kind of teams you would expect to be mid-ranking at best. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I'm sure the elite will return to levels we're more used to seeing them at. But to see Nottingham Forest in third, competing for the Champions League. There's still a lot to be pleased about this season. In fact, City are such a drop-off that they're struggling to make it in the top 4. Forest, as I say, you could still have Forest, Villa or Palace winning the FA Cup. The Carabao Cup winners were won by a team in Newcastle who've just won their first major trophy in 70 years. These are all, if you spoke about all those things at the start of the season, you'd go, oh, that sounds like an interesting season. And it is interesting. It's just the teams who we're used to seeing at the top have stunk the place out, apart from Liverpool. And people will start now talking about how good are Liverpool. We've had this conversation already on the podcast.
Crash, yeah, let's not go there again.
You can only be measured against the teams around you at that moment in time. Measuring Liverpool against other teams, or even other Liverpool teams, is a fool's game.
So do you think it's then, as I said, I posed quite a few questions in that intro, but my final one was, are we all just in a season of transition? Is this some strange, might be a novel you'd write, Alison, where everyone is in a season of transition?
No. Some
are getting better, but...
No, the bottom, the issue at the bottom is a problem that the Premier League and English football has to confront. I don't think that's going away. And I think the middle class of the Premier League are getting stronger. They might not always perform to this level, but they are getting stronger, in particular relative to the teams who are either trying to get in the Premier League or the teams who are promoted. That's the biggest problem. The other teams will come back. They're too rich. They're too wealthy. They've spent too much money already and will spend more in the future. I don't think that's probably a problem that's going to continue, if you would even describe it as a problem.
Just to your point about the bottom, 2 seasons ago, we had Southampton 23 points, Leicester 25, Nottingham Forest 27, Everton above them 27, Leeds United 29. And there is something interesting looking at the table this season with Wolves, West Ham and Everton above them already on like 32, 35 miles safe. So, Alison, would you agree with Gregor? You were watching Southampton get relegated this weekend, but do you think Gregor's right that the biggest problem of all those that we're looking at, I say problems, issues that I'm throwing at you all on a Monday morning, is the bottom 3?
It doesn't help, but it's if we didn't have the Gregor's labelled them the middle classes, which is quite nice, isn't it? But if we didn't have that, it would be a disastrous season, because what makes the Premier League great fun is that there's jeopardy everywhere.
Yeah,
and you need jeopardy, and you don't want to feel like there's a vacuum. And if you know who's going to go down, then it feels like a closed off place where there is, as long as you're not
a Super League.
As long as you're not one of the clubs that you know are going to go down, then you've got nothing to worry about. Like people were worried about Wolves back in September. It was quite clear they were not going to go down. It really was quite clear they were not going to go down because of the calibre of the player they had and the fixture list. It was quirky. They were never in danger, but the 3 promoted teams were always in danger, and that became accentuated and more obvious as the weeks went by. But but it is still interesting, I think, Gregor, because the reasons for each of those 3 clubs' relegation are slightly different.
They always are.
And it is nice to sort of have a bit of forensics into why.
Yeah.
And
let's do it.
Ivan Juric yesterday, I think actually that was the first time I've been in one of his press conferences, and I think he came across much better than he does on the telly.
I agree.
I really liked being in his company.
He's bold, isn't he?
He is bold. He said it was like we've got too. Well, I think we already knew Southampton had too many young players, but it's more about how you integrate youth and experience, which is common sense. And you kind of think, well, if you've got good young players, why don't you balance it out a bit? Make them. It's just an imbalanced team, I think.
Right.
And then physicality was a big point he was making. He just said they just didn't have the physicality to compete. And I think you only really, him being new to the Premier League, I think it shocked him just how physical it is. We just throw that phrase around a lot. Oh, Premier League's very physical. And sometimes we say things like, oh, but the physicality in the Championship. Actually, what we're talking about is that sort of elite level of physicality where if you can be technically good and fast and strong, and
remain fit as well. Because is that another part of this, Hamza? One of the other questions I posed in the intro was about the endless schedule. Looking at players like for Cole Palmer, for instance, a player that kind of basically had a non-stop season last season all the way into the Euros. Do we think there might be a bit of burnout coming into things already in April?
I think definitely so, because if you look at the top 3 teams last season, Manchester City, Arsenal and Liverpool, and you look at them this season, you go, well, all 3 teams look physically tired now. And they had really long seasons last year. And this links to Alison's point about the intensity of the league. If you compare, for example, the 17th place team. Okay, well, it's literally Wolves, right? If you compare them, I watched them the other day against West Ham, and you had the Brazil midfield there. It was Andre Gomez and Paqueta, right?
Yeah.
So, if you go to the equivalent position between 16th and 17th in La Liga, Ligue 1, Serie A, the Bundesliga, you're not getting, I don't know, the Argentina midfield or something similar, right? As in, you have super intense matches, and over the course of the season, fatigue accrues. So I understand that maybe you get a week off or 2 weeks off if you've got that little winter break. But generally, if you're playing the Champions League, the Premier League, super intense, then you've got summer tournaments. For these players, you are going to see the effect, and I think that's generally why in the past maybe 6-7 seasons, English teams actually haven't done as well as you would expect in the Champions League because they actually burn out.
Right.
So I think you've got a really, I think that's bang on the money there. But I would return to what you said earlier about, is this like a bad season? I think if you're from Manchester or if you're a Manchester United fan, then yeah, probably. But otherwise, I think the quality, like
I'm going to bring in a gratuitous bell to just ding every time there's something shoehorned in a little bit too much. The Manchester derby will come. You can throw you can shoot your shots later.
I think if you're from Tottenham, not from Tottenham, but if you're a Tottenham fan, you'd probably say the same though.
They've got a good European run, so that, as in on the cards, right? As in the season can still be saved if they have a trophy. That would be
so can Manchester United, by the way.
That could be true as well. That could be true as well.
Both things can be true.
But it's not true, is it? Come on, let's not pretend.
I agree.
The reason Spurs season can be saved is because they just never win a trophy. So winning a trophy would be amazeballs, as they say. But Man United, no, they can do it. They won the FA Cup. They've won the Europa League while being chronically bad, and it doesn't help them. So it's not the same at all.
Well, they weren't even chronic. Like 2 seasons ago, Manchester United were third.
Yeah, but they weren't playing
59 points.
People were a bit meh about
Manchester
them,
United were third. Only 2 seasons ago.
Sorry, listeners, I put a little dig in about Manchester United. I've moved this on to United. Sorry.
You did.
I'll return.
You did this.
There's a good
but you said
piece.
something that was factually incorrect, you see. You said... No, Tom did.
Tom did. There's a piece by...
Factually is a stretch, but anyway, yes. Sorry, Hamza,
Paul Joyce in the
on.
paper about how Declan Rice has played 240 matches over the past 4 seasons or so.
Remarkable.
That blows my mind.
And if you look at the England squad, in fact, this is a discussion we had, how many of them would you say, compared to last season, have improved or look better? A lot of them have just been injured. Like Saka, for example, so you may have expected him to push on, but he's missed three months. But the rest, they look like fairly sort of diminished. Maybe Mark Gay's improved, but spoke to some Palace fans recently, and they said actually he's dropped off a bit.
I was having the exact same thing about this weekend's game and saying he's had a fantastic season, but it's starting to look like it's catching up with him. So this, as I say, I'm not saying it's crap. I'm just trying to ask why we're at this stage. With largely 7 games left, the title race is all but done.
That's the big one.
The relegation is done.
But as in, we could just say if Liverpool were a little bit poorer, then you'd have a title race, and then the season would be better.
I don't know. Would it?
If you take that perspective,
point of view, yeah.
If you take that perspective, where you're just after a title race, and you say, okay, if Liverpool were a little bit worse, the season would be good. But I don't think that's probably the right way to look at the season or the quality of the season. If the top team is slightly worse, because everyone else is pretty good.
But also, we can also say it was never healthy when teams had to be almost perfect for most of the last decade to compete with Man City. You had to get almost 100 points.
This can be true. This is what I'm saying. I grew up in the 90s when Man United won the league with 78 points one year or something, didn't they? I'd be well up for going back to that. Great fun.
78 points.
No,
you're meant to be good and win the league, man. You can't be.
Listen, the way Liverpool are going, you might do well to get to 78 points. You still need 5 more to get there. We're going to hear about it, Liverpool, in a second. So, but anyway, so people don't think this is a crap season?
No, not at all. No. I think there are more teams who are operating and functioning well and playing good football, and with a lot of sort of different quirks as well. And they've got their journeys have been different. They're playing different styles of football. Like we talk about Fulham, there. There's a kind of team of elder statesmen who sign loads of Premier League cast-offs, essentially, and make them a success.
No Europe and bottled the FA Cup. But I'm just
Fulham.
playing. Yeah,
bottle the cup.
I mean,
that was what Alisson said against Crystal Palace.
The cup's a really good example.
What do you mean no Europe as well? They're not playing in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, what do you expect Fulham to be playing in Europe?
No, I'm making the point that they're having a good season And other teams...
You can't say that about every team. You cannot say, they're not playing in Europe.
Nottingham Forest not playing in Europe.
You cannot say that about Nottingham Forest.
Fulham. I'm just making...
They're overperforming.
They are absolutely overperforming. They're having an amazing season. But then a lot of the other teams that we're saying have dipped I'm trying to make the point about too many games. I'm not saying it is a critique of Fulham.
You've got a new League Cup winner. There's a really good chance we'll get a new FA Cup winner, as in a FA Cup winner that's not won it for
but that's what I'm
a
saying.
long time.
So it could be that kind of season, as you say, fewer points, different cup winners. That can be great. I'm purely just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that makes Fulham bad. I'm not saying it makes Forest bad.
I think it's actually a better than average season. But it's too easy to say, it's a tight title race. What an amazing season. I think if you go through the table and look at why each team is where it's at, is very, very interesting.
I agree.
Each team has an enclosed narrative that makes them brilliant to look at and think about.
But
they are unexpected.
Not necessarily a brilliant season. Liverpool will win the title, and that would be an amazing achievement. Arsenal will look at this season as a unless they win the Champions League, this will be a drop off for Arsenal, will it not?
That's interesting, isn't
Absolutely, it can be interesting. These things can be interesting. I'm talking about the levels and the quality.
This is more sort of outcome bias, though. You're looking at the end product rather than...
Potentially, yeah. But I'm also trying to think for an Arsenal fans. Like, I've got some pals who are Arsenal fans, and I think if they finish second, they look at weekends like this when they draw again against Everton and Liverpool drop points. And
but Arsenal finishing second should not define how we see the quality of the league.
But But I'm picking up on Alison's point about if you look at each teams individually and look at their narratives, they're all fascinating, but a lot of them are negative, is what I'm saying. So Nottingham Forest is overwhelmingly positive, unbelievable. What a season!
A lot of negative.
Arsenal,
Arsenal, United, City,
Man City,
yeah,
Aston Villa. If they finish,
Champions League quarter-final.
Yeah,
no way.
FA Cup semi-final.
Absolutely,
they've won the last 7 games in all competitions. They had a blip.
Yeah,
and Spurs. Sorry, okay.
This
Spurs, Manchester United.
Anyone with a brain cell would recognise that this should be expected. We said at the start of the season.
But this is also what I'm asking. Are we just going to see this round and round? This is also what I'm asking.
Well, that's part of trying to break into the top, to the elite. Like, you've got to,
So next season we'll be like, it's an amazing season for Everton under David Moyes because they've got no Europe, and what a performance at the new stadium. This is fantastic. We love Everton, whilst also simultaneously going, poor Fulham. They made it into Europe and now they're 15th again. But it's hard. It's so hard to do. Yeah, is that modern football now? So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. You
Would
get more games. You don't have. You either can't afford to sort of bolster your squad, or spending rules restrict you from doing so. That's probably more the case with Villa this season. So it's very, very difficult to break in and establish yourself as one of the teams who are always going to be in Europe. There's going to be a lot of fluctuation between...
That can be great. I'm just maybe changing our realities and our perceptions.
But that in itself is interesting. Yeah. Who do you appoint as your manager to be able to juggle your resources so that you can fight on more than just one front?
Not someone who runs them into the ground every single game. Say, this is the way we play, mate. Not them. Someone with a bit of pragmatism.
Ding, that's a gratuitous dig at Ange Postecoglou as well. But listen, if we end this conversation with actually that this is the best Premier League season for about 10 years, that's also fine. I just looked at this, planning this show, and was like, where are we at, lads? Where are we at? Hamza, I don't think you quite finished your point about tiredness and players playing, because it links back to how Gregor just answered my question about Europe and next season and any team who gets into Europe. Just to finish your point, you do think that this is going to be increasingly a common factor, that we're heading into a Club World Cup summer, then we'll have the World Cup next summer. We all make these jokes about football never ending. It really never does, let's be honest. Teams with post-season friendlies before pre-season friendlies just keeps going and keeps going. Is this going to be something that clubs have to manage more and more? Are we going to see more injuries? Are we going to see a drop-off in April every season?
First of all, you see more high-speed running, sort of year on year over the past 8 or so years. That's the intense stuff. You see more sprints. That's why you tend to have more soft tissue injuries, so lots of hamstrings, that sort of stuff. There's upside and downside to this. One is that the individual quality of matches towards the end of the season tends to be slightly poorer because the players are tired. But that also means that you can have closer matches between, let's say, what you'd expect to be a top team and a mid-table team. But I generally don't like the idea of not seeing the best football possible every week. I understand that you're going to have peaks and troughs, but as in, where possible, I would like to see the best of one team against the best of the other, rather than the best team or manager or sports science staff at moulding their squad and rotating, because that's not as interesting. But to your second point, I think you either have to have, if we keep the calendar the same, either we reduce the number of matches or we have larger squads. I would rather we reduce the number of matches, because I think there's player fatigue. I think there's not as in the same as voter fatigue, but watcher fatigue, spectator fatigue, right? Just too many matches, and it's not as interesting. And you get something like this where you're having a discussion, like you see lots of good football, but you
get idiots on a podcast saying it's crap.
And if you have to have bigger squads, then it's difficult for managers, first of all, because how do you recruit a group and keep everyone happy when you're telling players you're going to rotate them? You need more funding, and if you need more funding to have bigger squads and spend more money on wages and all that sort of stuff, where are you going to get the money from? The answer is from greater broadcast deals, which means more matches. It also leads clubs to try and seek money from revenue streams that otherwise would be sort of disliked. So, for example, let's go on a pre-season tour to 3 different countries around the world, let's play a match in America because we need the money. Let's get a new sponsorship and do a match with other sponsors. So I don't really like that route either. I'd much rather we have fewer matches and higher quality ones. But I think it is already a big problem. It will continue to be a big problem. There are too many international matches as well.
I think I'm going to keep banging on about the bottom 3 because I think it's the most important. I think I said the other week, Ipswich were the 13th highest spenders in the world last summer. And I look at their recruitment and I think, they did quite well. They bought a lot of the best players in the Championship. They signed Calvin bloody Phillips. Like, you think, you need a bit of Premier League experience. There you go. A couple of players who'd already played, like Darryl Shea had already played in the Premier League as well. Like, they did all right, and they were still miles off it. And Leicester and Southampton have spent one season outside the top flight in like the last decade. Give or take a couple of years between them. I think it was like 9 for Leicester and 11 for Southampton. They are established Premier League teams, and they went down. They took the Championship by storm. They come back and they stunk the place out again. And I know there are reasons. We can talk about the style of play, like,
do you know what? We should just
Russell Martin. What were you
sack off
thinking?
Promotion, closed league. That's fewer games for Hamza. Super League. They're doing it to us. They're doing it to us, aren't they? They've secretly putting it in place anyway. We'll sack off the promotion and relegation. That gives Hamza his fewer games.
The thing when Hamza said that is, they'll take the games away from the wrong places.
Well,
I say they, like, who's this kind of
the money
overarching
people
hand, but like,
The
we know where the
footballing
games
gods.
we know where the games will be lost, and it won't be, the European Champions League games.
Yeah, but it's not that hard to imagine the bottom 3 staying up if you tweak certain things. It is.
What?
I don't think it is. I mean, I just think.
So you think Southampton could have stayed up?
Steve Cooper's a fantastic manager. Was not given the chance to.
Yeah, he would have
see
done
it
better
through.
than Ruud, but I don't.
Ruud Van Nistelrooy. Everyone's been really nice about him because he was such a great player. He's not done a very good job, has he?
He's
you
not.
did say earlier that you knew that Wolves would. Well, we all accepted that Wolves would stay up though by September-ish time because their squad was just too good though. It was much better than the other 3 teams.
Yeah,
That's
but
the
I
main
still,
thing,
but there are squads you can look at and think, and like for example, Brentford, they've had really bad injuries. Their payroll is small. They're a small club, and yet that is just excellence in management that stops anyone ever thinking now about them being relegation fodder. But you could, if you wanted to. A bad manager could take Brentford down, I think, given the injuries they've suffered. But it's just poor decision making at
I don't think it's as
executive
straightforward as that
level.
now. I think there've
Has
been some
contributed.
there've been
I
some
do
poor
think.
decisions made, but I think again you look at who's coming up: Burnley, Sheffield United, and Leeds, plus one other probably. I don't have any faith that
Only
they'll
those
stay
3.
up.
They can't all go up. I know you want them all to go.
I don't. One plus one of them will be in the
Yeah,
playoffs or whatever. But I don't have any faith that any of them will stay up, even if they do make good decisions. It's becoming really, really hard to bridge
Well,
that
they're
gulf.
big clubs compared to the likes of Bournemouth and Brentford. So it is possible. It is possible to defy that logic, isn't it?
Well, I wrote a piece about this a few weeks ago. They're the exceptions to the rule now.
But they're not exceptions to the rule because there's a lot of them.
It'll be
Brighton too are.
No, it'll be
very
10.
well run.
It'll be 10 of the last 15 teams went straight back down, and three of those who stayed up in the first were in one season. It was Bournemouth, Forest, and help me out here, all in the same season stayed up. Anyway, and then Leeds were another, and they went down in the second season. And Brentford are the last team. So Brentford are the only one who's still there. Of those of the last five seasons of promoted teams, and Forest. So they it's very hard, hard to bridge that gap.
So
Fulham as well, yeah. Sorry.
So just in summary, players are tired. There's too many games. The bottom three are crap. It's still very interesting. That's just the round the table.
I'm just saying the bottom three being crap is what's.
Yeah. Sorry,
damaging the league more than anything.
As a quick summary of my intro of where we're at, but it's still great and it's still very interesting. Basically.
Yeah, because there's a story with each club.
One thing we've not spoken about is we have throughout the season, but is the style of play. This was raised a bit. Maybe we'll come on to talk about it in the Manchester derby, but.
Just keep going. We can just do a stream of consciousness pod. It's fine.
Well, we spoke about other kind of movement towards super intense, dynamic, slightly more vertical football, and that's partly why maybe Manchester City have fallen away a little bit.
Yeah,
that can be entertaining, but is it sustainable? That's one question.
Yeah.
I think that's one question that a lot of clubs are sort of wrestling with just now, and then the other is are too many teams kind of.
Yeah, I think you'd maybe have to go before a panel at the start of the season and go, hello, my name's Ange Postecoglou. This is how I'm going to play. I'm going to do this. I promise to do this all the time. Yep, you're through. Right. Hello, my name's Thomas Frank. I'm going to lump it long from goal kicks.
They don't do that anymore.
I'm joking. But I'm going to play it long from goal kicks and try and, mess with people and, get balls in the box. Yep, that sounds good as well. Get some culture clashes going. That could work.
Look, there is variety. There is variety. Yeah, there is variety.
So you think there is enough variety? Because a minute ago you were saying that everyone's got the same and there's too much butting up against each other.
No, I think there is variety, but I think there are a lot of teams who try and build play from the back and are shooting themselves in the foot all the time. And a lot of them are the promoted teams as well.
Pressing has got too good, I think, for the league.
I agree with that.
The development in pressing over the past 5 years has become really complex. And I think for a lot of teams now, it's actually too good. When teams go man-to-man, the team with possession can't cope.
So whatever you think all teams have got better at pressing, or just generally
I think all teams have got better
focus
pressing,
and people do it more.
It's become more complex.
Right.
And that's become much harder to deal with, and it requires a really high skill set to be able to play through that and good, really smart tactics as well. I think that's that. You felt bad for Southampton because I think, in theory, the ideas were from Russell Martin's ideas made sense.
Right.
They were smart, and I think when Pep Guardiola praised them, he didn't do it in a sort of mean way. He said, no, there's good ideas. However, there is a difference between having these very good ideas in theory and trying to put them into practice against incredible pressing talent. And I think that's where those ideas struggle because the guys can't execute it. I think that is a factor in that as well.
Pressing's a factor as well. See, there's actually loads and loads of things to talk about. Guys, thank you so much. That was a wonderful therapy session. I feel a little bit better about the final end of the season. We are actually going to talk about some of the games, I promise. Well, maybe I'll throw up another therapy problem in the second half of the show, but it's time to take a little break, which means it's time for a quiz question. Therapy and a quiz. You get the lot on the game podcast. Here we are. Oh, so nicely. You put your hand up, so that's fine.
Because I remember I did a piece on this. The number of goalkeeping errors has increased quite a lot this season, and that's a good example of how the better pressing has begun to elicit more errors from goalkeepers and affect build-up specifically. Sorry, I should have just...
No, that's fine. Earlier. More goalkeeping errors. It leads me perfectly onto the quiz question when I ask who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played as a goalkeeper, Hamza. See, we can always rescue a link if we need to. For Hull, Wigan, Manchester United, West Ham and Derby County. Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark and I'm joined by Hamza Khalik-Luna, Alison Rudd and Gregor Robertson. None of you got the answer.
I knew who it was.
You didn't say his name,
was on the tip of my tongue.
As ever, producer Neil bailing you out with the answer, which was Gregor.
Roy Carroll.
Roy Carroll. And listeners, I'd also like to make clear that in the break, Gregor basically agreed with everything I said at the start of the show, but he just decided to call me an idiot in the first half of the show. So anyway, that's just the dynamic we have. Alison, you were, as I mentioned in the first half of the show, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to watch Southampton be relegated already. Just quickly on this game for the two teams. On Southampton, not much to like on the pitch, but there was something that you'd like to mention off it.
Yeah, no, so Ivan Juric's his first experience of English football, and he said he was completely blown away by the fact that the Southampton fans did not boo their team. Their singing wasn't even ironic, really. It was just joyful, and they were giving the team as much support as they could. They clearly come to terms with their grief a few months ago, and they were just decided to enjoy the rest of the Premier League season while they're there. And Juric said this would not have happened in Italy. He was at Roma beforehand. And I think we take for granted what the Premier League is like and what the fans bring to the league. And when you're at a game like that, so all the Southampton fans, they're mostly wearing pink, the away kit. They had the sun on them the whole match, and they were singing just funny songs or happy songs and just being... And it wasn't sarcastic. That's the thing. They weren't being sarcastic. They were recognising a lot of these players are young. They're not going to benefit from us having a go at them.
They were supporting their team.
They were supporting the team, but in a I don't know, such a very grown up but in love sort of way. And it was in its own way rather beautiful because there were also first half Southampton were dreadful, but in the second half they had a lot of possession. They looked very grown up. Scored a goal, and you saw glimpses of what might have been if they'd been constructed differently with a more reasonable setup managerially. And you just think, they'll probably be okay. They'll be back within a year or 2 years. And it was just, it wasn't. I'd have thought at the start of the game, I thought this is going to be depressing. I'm going to have to write about Southampton breaking an unwanted record. You know, they're going to be the
first team in Premier League
team.
history to be relegated with as many as 7 games remaining.
Exactly. That's not a nice thing to have to type. I didn't want to have to type that, and
It's a tough gig sometimes, Alison.
I didn't even type it in advance, which I'm sure every other person did. I just thought, you never know, they might get a draw.
Yeah.
Might not have to say it.
Yeah.
But actually, it ended up being sort of joyous and renewed your faith in what fans do and think when they travel around the country supporting a team that isn't going to get anywhere.
Well done, Southampton fans.
Well done, you.
Well done. I mean, that sounds patronising, but I mean it. But Gregor,
probably relieved to be going back to the Championship where they won a few games. I'm not joking.
No, but on that idea, and we're going to be recording an EFL show later that you can listen to tomorrow, listeners, but the Championship's a tough place to be, and we're talking about Alison's interesting hearing Alison talk about the fans there acknowledging that they're a young group of players. That is quite important, that if they're going to go down first team in history, blah, 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 they still need 2 more points to get past Derby's lowest points tally, etc. That can really eat away at you as a player, surely. And then to go back into the bare pit of the Championship it's not going to be straightforward for them.
No, I mean, that's the weird sort of conflict in all this, is that everyone thinks you should just, walk the Championship when you're relegated. And look, you get a near £50 million parachute payment, which is about twice the turnover of the rest of your rivals when you're relegated. So it does make it easier. But there's usually a lot of turnover, and it's hard to pick up a club and a team. Russell Martin did that really well last year. Southampton had been, not this bad, but really, really bad when they were relegated the last time. They had to ship out loads. Remember their team in the first day of the season, I think it was at Sheffield Wednesday, they had James Ward-Prowse, Nathan Taylor, who went to Bayer Leverkusen. There was still loads of stuff they had to do by the end of the transfer window. It's not easy. So, yeah, that's part of what their future is. But more broadly, I'm serious. I remember doing a piece when they were close to being promoted, and speaking to fans of Southampton. I think it was Leicester, maybe Burnley, a few others, and saying and there was a lot of them thinking, we really enjoy being back here because it's miserable. It's miserable being one of these teams in the bottom 3, watching your team getting tonked, despite them having done a lot of good things, and either in the transfer market, having a bright young manager, having a lot of talented players. Seeing someone like Tyler Dublin come into the team has been probably the one bright thing for them this season. But none of it's enough. So I honestly think there's a growing kind of swell of opinion among these teams, particularly of like yo-yo clubs, and there's going to be more of them, who will be happy when it's over.
You're making your Super League argument even more strong, I would say, Gregor. Alison, on Tottenham, I've got a fun fact for everyone. Brennan Johnson, 15 and 16 goals, is the first Tottenham Hotspur player to score 15-plus goals in all competitions in a season, other than Harry Kane or Son Heung-min, since Gareth Bale.
Gone under the radar a bit, hasn't he, I think?
Super Brennan Johnson, former Lincoln City legend. But in terms of...
Didn't get the penalty for the hat-trick, though, did he?
No.
That was weird.
That was mean.
That was mean. Tottenham, Southampton fans, brilliant. Tottenham players, a bit mean. But Tottenham got a big game in the Europa League this week, of course. How was our mate Ange? How was your mate Ange afterwards? The silence descends.
He was boring, which is, if you like, you've drawn the short straw if you get a boring Ange presser. Went on about VAR again. I mean, I think we've had enough of that, haven't we, really? He played rock, paper, scissors while there was 7 minutes
for the end of
waiting,
this show.
Waiting for the VAR review to come through.
He said he played rock, paper, scissors.
Well, we could watch it. That's what he did.
Did he?
Yeah.
Who with?
Himself.
What?
To prove the point that it's random in his view. It's
he was stood in
random.
his technical area doing rock, paper, scissors with himself.
Yes.
Oh, Ange. Oh, Ange. Oh, Ange. I'm worried for him.
I think he might have been quiet, other than the VAR rant, which he's been consistent about. So fair enough.
If he wants to go,
if he wants to go on and on about it, fine. But and both have been accurate. I don't really know what is. It's not like there's been some cock up into columns.
We've got a bit of VAR chat to come, so we can argue about that later, or maybe just find one we agree on. But
I think he was probably. I felt like he was processing in front of my eyes what he made of it ahead of a critical game on Thursday night in the Europa League, because Spurs played well-ish in the first half, put together. Looked a bit more like Ange ball. They were on the front foot. Crisp passing through the ranks. A bit of confidence. But that was mainly because Southampton, you could tell they were a bit nervous about what might come. And they were jittery. They were jittery and they were poor opposition. Frankfurt will not be like that. They're third in the Bundesliga. They're doing okay. And in the second half, I can't help but think everyone on the pitch was thinking, I don't want to get injured ahead of a crucial game. So they stopped playing football altogether, just stood around, basically, and allowed Southampton to look for about 20 minutes like an ordinary mid-table team. So there's... And Ange didn't say, I told them to be more conservative or whatever. He said, I wasn't happy with the way we reacted there. Does that mean he has no control over...
But he has to say that, doesn't he?
Our team goes out in the second half?
You
can frame it differently. Does he have
to say that whilst also thinking, good lads, just take a step off here. We're going to win this game. I need you for Frankfurt.
It's
a good bit of politics, isn't it, to say that?
I don't know. It gave me the impression that if it doesn't go well quite soon on in the game against Frankfurt, it could unravel for them because it means too much, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, they're going to finish bottom half. That's appalling, really, when you think about it. It's appalling, and so it means everything that they win a trophy, and they're by no means in such a great place that you think this is in the bag. It will be tense and it will be difficult.
Good news for Ange Postecoglou and Tottenham fans. Alison Rudd is coming to that game on Thursday as well. So we'll see if you get a better Ange presser. We'll make sure to check in with you about that next Monday. Hamza, Fulham, this is your chance. I told you at the start of the show you'd have your chance to say how brilliant Fulham are, because they are. They beat Liverpool, the league leaders, the runaway league leaders. They beat Liverpool 3-2 and were good value for the win, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I was just checking a few stats out, actually. Gregor mentioned misery, and I noticed Fulham's goal difference is +5. In the past 10 seasons, usually at least half a league have negative goal difference. This season, just 7 do, which I think is...
more reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah. But as in...
for the 7.
They sorry.
Not for the 7.
No, yeah, as in the misery is concentrated, right? So if for them it sucks a bit, but would you rather a bit philosophical,
Yeah,
right? Would you rather
we're getting to a bit
some
of class war
super
here, aren't we?
miserable people and like a better spread all round, or just half the league just getting like stomped on? Up to you. You can decide. But I'll return to Fulham now. I thought they used some smart tactics. I thought it was quite fun to watch them. They used long balls quite well. They would double up, sometimes even triple up on the left side in between Curtis Jones, who's playing at right back, and Konate. They caused them problems. Their pressing was interesting. They jumped from a 4-4-2 into a 4-2-4, and they kept occupying Liverpool's back line. They were good value. I thought Liverpool were really poor in the first half. So Van Dijk and Konate had one of their poorest halves together. Coincidentally, they've also had the same was true against Everton in that first half, and also across the entire match with Everton at Goodison Park. I thought that was particularly interesting.
Is the Van Dijk, could that be tiredness we're talking about at the start of the show? He's played a lot of games, been absolutely phenomenally brilliant early on in the season. Is this just the dip again for a player who's perhaps feeling his age a little bit more in a very intense league, as we were talking about?
Maybe it comes from a slightly different, as in the specific profile in the past 3 matches of like Newcastle, Everton and Fulham and their strikers and the way that they play, because he doesn't usually dominates those contests, but he doesn't have those type of contests very often now. So maybe it's that.
So
maybe
when you
it is
say
a
like
legginess.
a one-on-one battle, do you mean? Or
Yeah,
like
with big
Target man.
target man. Yeah.
So maybe it's that. Maybe it is to do with the legginess. I think maybe that has a role, but that's also to do with the team as well. When you look at so he's on course to break his like record for minutes played. Salah is as well. Gravenberch is. I think McAllister and Szoboszlai are as well. So when your teammates when you play the high line and your teammates ahead of you are a bit tired and they lose their contest, suddenly you're in more one-on-one duels. And this was also true in the 2022-23 season, I think. So Liverpool's midfield fell apart and the defenders looked pretty poor, but that's because they're put in pretty extreme situations.
Right. So they've been more exposed, you mean?
Yeah. So I think it's a bit of that as well.
Plus, jeopardy's disappeared. It's human nature. They've won the league.
I mean, you say it's human nature, but as in that didn't stop City from getting 100 points.
They were pushed though.
100 points, in the 99 points season, that was true. And then I think Liverpool still got 99 points. I know they had that big drop off in the COVID season because of the break. It's not necessarily human nature, but I think to a large degree that is right. Yeah, when you don't have as much pressure, you can ease off a bit. It's a bit concerning for Liverpool that they've lost 3 of the past 4. So there's some question marks there. I think you're right to bring up the legginess and think about how when players peak and whether Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes have a point in playing hardball with 2 of the players that are over 30. I think Van Dijk's 33, Salah's 32. So maybe there's a bit more logic there. But
what do you think to that?
I wrote about it in December, didn't I? We discussed it last week. So,
but I mean, we're still all broadly in the camp of contract for both of those, right?
It's an allocation of resources point because, for example, let's say you give them 2-year deals, but in 2 years you're just going to have to get another centre back, another winger, fundamentally, and they probably also need to be quite good. So, is the opportunity cost of moving now less than the opposite? That's the question. So I probably would, but again, it depends on context. If someone
the
said,
ideal's a 1-year deal for both, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but no player's ever going to accept that.
No, I know,
right?
absolutely.
On a 2-year deal, not on ridiculous terms. Like, there's a that's the whole negotiation.
But
I need to send you in, mate, don't you? You don't know you're born.
How could you
These
tell
bloody contracts in my day?
One player that's put up like career best numbers and the other who's captained his team to the league title. We're going to reduce your base salary and put you on higher incentives. In any other industry, it would be, no, that's a ridiculous negotiating position. I'm going to go to a different organisation who's going to pay me properly for the work that I've produced.
Is this you asking for a pay rise, Hamza?
No.
But is it even a crisis if you get Mo Salah delivering what he's delivered and wins you the title, and then he gets a bit tired in April? So what? That's what I said.
No one said crisis,
I don't
Alison.
think
You
he's
said crisis.
tired. I think they just need to pass to him more. Honest, they didn't give him anything in the first. He had 2 passes received in the final third in the first half. I think one of those was like a hyper looped up pass, which he tried to header. In the second half, he missed an opportunity, but it was a good chance, and he laid on 2 more for his teammates, and that was just because they passed to him more. We've said before, when Trent passes to him, Liverpool usually play well. In the first half, they didn't pass to him, and they weren't quick enough in build-up because of the way that Fulham press, but also because of their lethargicness in midfield.
Well, you should be his agent then.
He's got a good agent.
There's an idea. There's an
But
idea.
yeah, they should pass to him more. I think they just get more out of him. Because
Yes, but it's just I just don't like the reductive element of he's getting on a bit. Should we sign him or not? Analyse the season.
Yes.
4-year deal.
Yeah.
See, you must be able to work out how you can get as much, if not more, out of Mo Salah next season if you look at what he
you don't
did
have-
and when he did this season.
You don't even have to get as much as you got out of him this season.
Yeah, he's
it's
still great
ridiculous.
if
That's what
it's-
Slot said.
yeah.
Like Slot's been asked now for a few weeks. Like, Salah's dropping off a bit. He's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's probably inevitable. What he was doing before wasn't normal. Like, so that's the reality of it. If he doesn't even over the course of a season get the level of output that he has this season. If he gets close, he's still a huge asset for them. So it's weighing that up with how much, as Hamza outlined, it's going to cost to keep him.
It is a remarkable part of Liverpool's season, though, isn't it, Alison? That you've had this hanging over their season, and they will win the title, and it's been incredible. I mean, it's incredibly impressive from Slot, isn't it? That almost the way that he's handled it and the club have handled this situation, where, as Hamza says, you've got one of your best players of recent history producing one of his best seasons in recent history, and a captain being largely brilliant at the back, and yet they're both still, as we head into the middle of April, out of contract in a couple of months' time. That's fairly remarkable.
Well, they're remarkable characters because for those players who've spoken. I mean, Mo Salah used to say nothing, but he's given quite a few post-match briefings now, which have indicated he'd like things to move on. So to be in that mindset where you're prepared to gripe publicly and yet still deliver and show your love to the crowd and for the crowd to love you outside of that's the remarkable bit. It is
and Van Dijk's been quite chatty.
It's like Severance, isn't it? It's like he has his brain, match brain, and then his post-match brain, completely different.
Let's not link it to Severance. We'll be here for hours if we link it to Severance. Hamza, just quickly on those players talking. Virgil van Dijk has spoken as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. So
Did
generally,
he speak to you?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Said, hello, Hamza. Congratulations on the SJA award.
He mugged me off last time I spoke to him because that was Bournemouth match. I did the presser with Alisson. I tried to do the presser and the mix zone, and then I popped out the presser and went, there's a big giant guy in the mix zone. I was like, better leg it. Ran over. It's like, bit late, mate.
Did he?
Yeah, politer this time.
Is he Australian? I didn't know.
But anyway, this time Virgil van Dijk said what?
He said there has been progress on his contract.
Progress.
And then we're like, what sort of progress? I'm like, you'd love to know that.
Yes, Virgil, we would.
But this is actually a step change because for the previous few months, when he's been asked about his contract, he usually says, no updates yet. I'm pretty calm with what's going on. Anyone with any sort of who claims they've got insight into progress is lying. I've paraphrased that last bit, but I think he didn't say lying, but he just said he said they're wrong. But this is a bit of a change. He said that there is progress. He mentioned the other day actually that in the coming weeks we should get some sort of a resolution. So I think we're now moving into the end game of this contract discussion.
Yeah.
With Salah wasn't in the mix zone, but I imagine that's also probably getting a bit closer.
We will see. You'll hear about it first on the Times website, I'm sure. Now, perhaps the most damning criticism of the Manchester derby is that we've got 50 minutes into a game podcast episode without even mentioning it. And to be honest, I'm tempted to leave it all together. What an absolute shocker. I text Paul Hurst, who was our reporter doing the match report at this game, before this match, and I said, was it the worst Manchester derby you've ever seen? And he said, yes. I enjoyed watching Sheffield Wednesday, which is his team, against Hull City more on Saturday, and we conceded a 94th minute goal, which I think is about as critical as you could possibly get for the Manchester derby coming from Paul Hurst. Just a quick stat, since Ruben Amorim's first game in charge of Manchester United, only Leicester with 12 have failed to score in more Premier League matches than United, 8. Hamza, you keep telling them to shoot. They keep not listening to you.
They've improved the defence.
Yes,
I don't mean
but
that.
do we think
I'm not
that's
trying to
no? I don't
knock
think
him there.
No.
He has.
Do we get the sense that there is systematically, at least with this formation that Amorim is, sticking with, a sense that okay, you can see what he's doing there, and that maybe the players just aren't good enough. Gregor?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm not sure how much fun it's going to be, like, going forward.
But I'm not sure how fun it's going to be could be the title of this episode, I think.
Well, it's a conservative setup. It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I just don't know how well it'll fit with Manchester United. If he wants to dominate the ball, they'll be doing a lot of it in their own third.
So what you're saying is we're going to have... But everyone likes him now, but this time next season we're going to have attack at Old Trafford again, like we did a few years ago.
Well, he's saying it. He's saying that he said that this is a start point. We know we've got to do this. We need to improve. Almost every week he says, we know we need to improve everything. It's like, yeah, you're right, Ruben. But, entertainment is one of them. And I'm not blaming him because, as you say, the fact remains that the players aren't good enough, and they wouldn't be good enough whatever shape he was playing. But I'm not convinced that this is going to be thrilling Manchester United anytime soon.
You know, the most ironic thing of the whole season is, do you remember when Ruben Amorim was touted to be joining, and everybody spoke about how Bruno Fernandes will not fit into his system. He'll be on his way out. He certainly won't be picked. Just doesn't fit into the system. He has been their best player in almost every single match, and was the only Man United player playing football on Sunday.
He's often the only Man United player playing football most of the time. Speaking of excellent midfielders, quick word on Kevin De Bruyne, of course, saying he's leaving Manchester City. That news coming out on Friday. This game, perhaps another example as to why, looking a little bit off the pace. Where do we rank De Bruyne in our greats to have graced the Premier League? Top 10 players?
Top 3.
Top 3! Huge!
I think so.
Top 3 ever. I love it. Gregor's got quite punchy with his predictions and verdicts lately.
I just think for someone who can bend the game to his will, his drive, his kind of force of personality, the way everyone around him has to lift their standards. It's not just everything he does with the ball, but then he would often just produce moments that would win games. And as I said, there's a period of time where the City just used to, I said this when we were talking about Trent the other week, they used to just create overloads in a little inside right channel to get him on the ball, and when you got him in that little pocket of space to open up and put a cross in, you kind of knew there was going to be a goal, at least one goal per game from that situation. So absolutely, yeah, he's been one of the best players in the Premier League.
That I'm not disputing, definitely not. But the top 3 thing, that was a great shout. I think the best thing to come out of this game, by the way, listeners, check out the end of the game, which I'm sure made Roy Keane squirm when they're all going around and hugging each other. But Pep Guardiola went round chatting to all the Man United players, and he looked a bit like a kind of drunk uncle at a wedding, going round going, Gregor, how's it going? How's the missus? You well? Yeah, lovely. Great shirt, by the way. I had a lovely chat with Luke Shaw where you could tell he was really am-dramming the, injury, nightmare. Absolute shocker. And then he saw Mason Mount. He's like, Mason, how's it going? You made it. You played. Still okay? How's the knee?
Roy Keane's up in the studio spitting feathers.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are they doing?
I really like it. I hope
cosplaying as a normal manager.
Yeah.
Well, it's just what everyone else does when they're not winning all the time.
I'm up for this Pep Guardiola when just try and win a cup competition and finish 4th, but just be a bit less intense and a bit more chilled out. Speaking of people who are going to have to be intense, Arsenal and Aston Villa, Champions League action this week. Just very quickly for Arsenal fans who have got their headphones, are going to throw them across the room. The Everton penalty. Do we all think it was not a penalty? Gregor Robertson, here he comes, game's gone, shaking his head, go.
The game's not gone, it was a mistake. Ref made a mistake. He kind of, I don't know, maybe slightly landed on him as he fell over, but it wasn't enough for a penalty for me.
You would certainly be upset if it was given against you. They have a huge game against Real Madrid. Do any of us give them any hope whatsoever, given all their injuries? I do. Hamza, you do?
Yeah. Real Madrid are quite leaky. I think if they attack them, they could have a go, but I've spoken about Arsenal's attack before. I don't think they attack enough.
Maybe they've saved it all for this moment.
They also have a lot of injuries.
They do.
I think they could probably benefit from less intense training and maybe better load management in matches. You think about the cup match which Saka played, probably didn't need a top up in that match, and there's other matches as well. Gabriel played in the PSV match, I think, because you can, in training, you can. So what they're probably trying to do is top up players' loads, but you can either do it in training or you can do it in matches. If you do it in training, you've got really accurate information and you can control the intensity of training really well, because if you can just say stop. In a match, you can't. Sometimes you might get 10 minutes added time or whatever. So because it's a bit more uncontrollable, you then end up with situations where, for example, a player that you don't want to be doing 20-metre sprints is doing 20-metre sprints, then they get injured. So maybe there's some tweaks that they could make there for next season. It's going to be really tough because they don't have their starting defenders, but could they cause trouble for them? Yeah, man, they've got Saka. Honestly,
They've got Saka. They certainly have. We love Saka, don't we? We'd love a Saka kind of comeback story against Real Madrid. That'd be wonderful to watch. Aston Villa, as much as they're having a terrible season, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, ha, 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 face Paris Saint-Germain. Villa beating Nottingham Forest, which is a great sign because Nottingham Forest, PSG, basically play exactly the same. So it's perfect. See, I've got all the gags. But Hamza, you are working on a piece which was pitched to you by Joe, my colleague on the editing floor.
It was James's idea.
Was it? Who are we going to body for this idea? The suggestion that Aston Villa have got no chance against PSG. You don't think that's true, though, do you?
No, they're really good, man.
Who, PSG or Aston Villa?
Both.
Yeah.
But I was on about Villa. The way that they've been playing recently, Rashford might play as a 9, which gives them a really good option. Asensio, Rodgers has been playing phenomenally as well. Marlon scored the other day. I think they've got real quality on the counter-attack. And if you look at the PSG-Liverpool match, which is a fantastic couple of legs, one of the ways that PSG were able to exploit Liverpool was by allowing them to... Liverpool pressed and they played through the space and they exposed it really well and they used their qualities, especially in the front line, and attacked the space in behind. Villa don't press in the same way. They do press, but they tend to sit off. They tend to guide opponents to one side and then they jump, which means that the way I see this, I'm not going to say the game will play out that way, because whoever knows, right? But the way I see that could pose a bit more of a problem to PSG, because it might be a bit harder to get the best forward players in one-on-ones in the defensive line. The question is, how well do Villa play their offside trap? So that'll be a really cool test. But I think they've got really good quality on the counter, good quality on the set pieces. If they could keep it within a goal and take it back to Villa Park, that'd be...
That's right.
Yeah. Paris first. Yeah, of course.
Paris first, yeah.
I think they've got a good chance.
Wonderful. A positive note to end.
If they lose 4-0...
No, don't ruin it.
So what?
Don't ruin it. Neil, cut that bit out. A positive note to end on. No, I'm joking. Alison Rudd, Hamza Khalik Nuna, and Gregor Robertson, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you too for listening. If you've got strong views on whether this season is a brilliant season or a bust, get in touch with me, tom.clark@thetimes.co.uk. We'll be back with an EFL show with me and Gregor and the regular show on Thursday. We'll see you then.